This morning, we have a new speaker with us. This is our second quarter speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce Brenda Clark-Hamilton. Brenda is an engaging speaker who provides fresh perspectives in leadership, communication, customer service, and offering one's personal best to relationships and career. Even though I read that, I sincerely mean it. I found Brenda online, saw some video clips, and thought she was phenomenal. She's here today to talk to us about emotional intelligence and kind of teach you guys a little bit more about what that term means. And she's going to teach us some important tools and tactics that will help you grow in your personal lives and your professional lives. So let's give Brenda a warm AE welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Beth. It is my absolute honor to be here. I live in northern Iowa, and went to your website to kind of check things out as Beth and I started talking. And first of all, she's been wonderful to work with and getting everything organized, so I so appreciate that, and so hospitable. But what an amazing company you have. And to think it's right here in Topeka in the Midwest, where I'm from as well, is really amazing. So it's great to be here. I'm honored to be here. I want to start by getting involved right away. I'd like you to turn to someone next to you. Find someone intelligent close by. This should not be difficult. And I want you to tell that person one thing that you do well in your work. This is your time to brag about yourself. It's not an option, it is a requirement. You have 60 seconds to brag about yourself to the person next to you. Ready, set, go. 60 seconds, that's it. Okay, if you could please wrap up that thought. If you could please wrap up that thought, that would be wonderful. Please hold the applause. My husband Chris and I recently celebrated 27 years since he picked me up in the bar in downtown Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's very special to us. We have 3 sons who are 22, 19, and 16. And several months ago, my boys decided that my track phone flip phone was just a little bit too lame for words. Is there anyone still sporting the track phone flip phone? Yes, sir. We have a bond. And my teenagers decided it was too lame, and so I had to get my first smartphone, which they helped me pick out. And I understand you have all these apps that you can download. Well, this is a real app. I don't know if it's for the men in the room. If any of them have it on their phone, it is called the Bro app. Does anybody have this on your phone? I'm not kidding. It's $1.99. You can download this thing. And what it is, you know, women, when a guy has his wife, his girlfriend, his significant other, it'd be very sweet if at some point during the day he sent you a little text saying, how's your day going? I'm thinking of you. I love you. Something like that. But that's a lot of work for a guy to have to do that all by himself. So they can actually go to the Bro app website, and they have all these pre-made messages. And the man just goes through and checks off which ones, and the Bro app sends it to her randomly throughout the day. You have this on your phone. You could be sending hi, honey, winky face just while sitting here right now. How many women are appalled that this is available? I agree. Well, this morning we're talking about emotional intelligence. And we're talking about the difference between book smart and people smart, and I'll explain in a moment what I mean by that. There's really 2 parts we'll be doing in our time together. In the first half, we're going to lay a nice foundation for what is emotional intelligence and why you should know about it. And then in our second part, we'll be talking about how can you actually improve your emotional intelligence and become more effective not only at work, but also at home, in your friendships, in your relationships, just in general, in how people respond to you. So that's where we're headed. So I'm excited to be here. Let's start by part 1 by saying this. What is emotional intelligence? And I want to start with this question. When you say that someone has good people skills, or you say so-and-so, they're so good with people, what is it that you mean when you say that? Who'd be willing to share? What does it mean? They're so good with people. What do you mean by that? Yes, ma'am.
I feel like a really good communicator.
Okay.
React well with others and can kind of read different situations or how different people react to others.
Excellent. So they can read situations and communicate clearly and maybe adjust that message depending on if people are confused or upset. and handle that situation. Excellent. What other ways would you use to describe people who are good with people? What traits do they have?
They connect with people on a personal level, even if it's a business situation or something.
They build that rapport with people where you visit with them for a few minutes and you feel like, oh, I feel like I've known you forever, which is important in business relationships as well. Excellent. Other traits of people with good people skills. Good listeners. What's excellent? Very relatable. Excellent. One more over here. Very relatable. Excellent. What you've done is come up with an excellent definition of the term emotional intelligence, summed up as EQ. I want to give you a little background on where this came from. Curious, how many of you have heard of this term before today's session or before you started? A little history lesson on how it came to be. In 1995, there was a gentleman named Daniel Goleman, and he was a researcher turned author. And what he did is in 1995, he wrote a book simply called Emotional Intelligence. That was the title. It went to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, and it stayed there week after week after week after week. And he was on Oprah and Larry King and all the big shows at the time. And the basic point that he made in that original book was that just as each one of us has an IQ, which we've all heard of that, an intelligent quotient, which tells you how smart you are in traditional academic realms, things like thinking and problem solving and math and logic, he said that each one of us also has an EQ, an emotional quotient, which tells you how smart you are in realms of your emotion, your ability to communicate a clear message to people and read how they're responding, your ability to build rapport with people, your ability to be adaptable, to be a good listener, your ability to control your emotions so when you're having a bad day, you don't just fly off the handle and yell and scream at people and give up. And the basic point he made in that book in 1995 was that in relationships and in the field of education, studies tell us that many times one's EQ is more important than one's IQ in determining how successful you'll be in those areas. What he did not realize was after the publication of that book, Goleman would be inundated from letters and emails from people all over the world in the business industry saying, back up the truck a little bit, Goleman. This doesn't just have to do with relationships and education. This has to do with our success as a business and the success of our people within our business. So in the year 2000, he wrote a follow-up book called Working with Emotional Intelligence. And in that, he cites many studies that have been conducted on the role of emotional intelligence in the workplace. And I will be sharing some of those with you in a moment. But I want to give you some idea of how big this concept has grown. The first time that term, emotional intelligence, was ever hit on the national stage was in 1995. So I was just curious. The first time I did a program on emotional intelligence on that subject as a workplace trainer, I own my own business doing this full time. And the first time I did a program on it was 10 years after that. November of 2005 was my first program on emotional intelligence specifically. I thought, I wonder how many books have been written since that initial book came out in 1995. So I went on to Barnes & Noble, the bookseller, typed in the subject line, emotional intelligence, to see how many books had been written since that initial one. 431 book titles popped up. Went back 3 months later, we were up to 445. Went back a year later, 578. If you do the math on the growth of how many books were published on this subject, it averages out to about 10 new books being published per month on the subject of emotional intelligence. And it's primarily because businesses are saying this is huge for our success as a business. It is critical. Eventually that number did tailor off, and I quit keeping track after 2011 because now they have ebooks and notebooks and all that, so it's really hard to get an accurate number. But that's where we're headed. I want you to think of your own particular role at Advisors Excel, what you do here every day. And I want you to respond to this question: to what extent are good people skills and a good attitude, which are really the two components of emotional intelligence, to what extent are those two things important in the work that you do at Advisors Excel? By a show of hands, how many of you would say people skills and a good attitude are very important to the work that I do here? How many of you would say somewhat important? Of little consequence? Every single person, if you weren't watching, I saw them all, said of critical consequence, very important. That is, I have worked with about every industry that you can imagine. I mean, from engineering to agriculture to hog managers to tourism industry, healthcare, hospital CEOs. I mean, you name it. I've probably worked with them, have presented this in front of literally thousands of people, I'm sure, probably tens of thousands. I've only had one person ever say anything less than somewhat or less than very important. And that was someone who said of little consequence. It was a swine veterinarian, swine nutritionist, but I had other people in the room say that's a bunch of baloney. It's critical to our work as swine nutritionists, swine veterinarians. But I want you to just focus for a minute here on 4 key business outcomes that businesses are hoping to achieve. We all relate to this: productivity. We want people to get a lot done. We want to be able to keep our best employees happy. We want to have high levels of customer satisfaction and profitability, of course. If you think of putting any of those business goals in this line here, this blank space, I think you'll find that people skills are critical. If you ask yourself, to what extent do our good people skills or a lack of good people skills affect advisors' Excel productivity? Well, think of how little you'd get done if people could not set clear expectations within our department of what we want. Our ability to retain good employees, that ability to have managers and leaders that communicate with you and that say, we encourage your growth, we want you to be successful here. To keep customers happy. How many of you work with customers regularly? I have a feeling they expect you to be pretty darn good with people in order to do that job well. All right, I want to show you a few studies, then we're going to dip your toes more specifically into emotional intelligence for you. This is from Diana Boer, who said a recent study of 3,000 business execs asked what their top criteria were in hiring new professionals. Their top response was attitude. Number 2 was communication skills. Both ranked ahead of academic or technical training. A survey of USC business grads 5 years into their career asked what knowledge or skills they were most lacking in preparation for their business career. And you might think, well, maybe, something very technical, like, a fiscal accountability or tax laws or something very technical they didn't get in their program. And they said, no, what we wanted more of in our business program were leadership skills and interpersonal communication skills. A national survey of what employers are looking for in entry-level workers revealed that employers first look for the ability to learn on the job. And if you think of our technical age, the way technology changes, regulations change, the information age you're in, that is not surprising at all. However, after that initial skill, they listed, and look at the people skills lineup here, many of them that you listed: listening skills, oral communication, adaptability. If plan A doesn't work out, can you come up with plan B? Self-confidence, personal management. You're able to handle your emotions and not just scream at people or shut down when you're having a bad day. Motivation to work toward goals, even when you're getting tired during the week. Taking pride in your work, that you don't have to have someone standing over you constantly to get your work done, that you just on your own say, I'm going to get this done and do a quality product. Ability to get along with others, to negotiate if there's agreements. And finally, leadership potential. Now, I'm curious, how many of you here, by show of hands, have somewhat of a leadership role within the organization? Because we're going to speak to you right now. So be aware, take good notes. Goldman, you might be saying, well, what did their studies find in regard to leadership or managers? Goldman found that among managers, the skill in communicating strongly distinguishes star performers from average or poor ones. He refers to listening skills as the overlooked 1/3, because he says when people rate their manager as a communicator, if you think of it as a large pie, a full 1/3 of that communication pie is their perception of how well you listen to them. And sometimes managers say, hey, I'm a great communicator, I talk all the time, I talk nonstop. Not realizing people want a manager who will listen to them. Study of 130 execs and managers found that their ability to handle their emotions determined the degrees to which people wanted to work with them. And if you've ever worked with someone where you're riding the emotional roller coaster with them, depending on what version of them showed up for work that day, you know what I'm talking about. This last one is my personal favorite quote from Goldman, who says, too much college, too little kindergarten. Say there's a lot of managers out there, they have all the names, all the credentials, all the letters behind your name, but they never learned how to play nice, how to share, how to take turns, how to get along with other people and be polite. Now, you might be asking, okay, so can I be a leader within an organization or any employee and just be dumb as a post? Doesn't my IQ count for anything? Well, doesn't that mean anything? Well, they wanted to know that. So with leaders, they did one particular study of the top executives of 15 global companies. And what they did, they took two groups of managers. Those who are here, solid, strong managers, they get a lot done within their organization. They do a nice job of retaining employees, of having customer satisfaction, all that. And then they took another group of leaders, those that really excelled, that had amazing success when it came to productivity, profitability, customer satisfaction, keeping their employees happy. And they studied, they wanted to know what's the difference between these good and great groups. Is the difference their content knowledge and their intelligence? Or is their difference their people skills? Well, they found there was only one distinguishing cognitive or thinking ability between these two groups, and that was pattern recognition. Pattern recognition, the ability to look at numbers and to notice trends in the data, to look at statistics and identify, oh, I see a pattern here that these people seem to be purchasing such and such thing based upon such and such. And that ability was indeed correlated with being one of those great managers. However, outside of that one cognitive ability, intellectual or technical superiority played no role in leadership success. None. Now, again, that goes back to, well, can I be dumb as a post and lead within this organization? Of course not. You have to have a certain level of knowledge of what it is that you do within your industry, and you have to have a certain level of intelligence to do your job. But it's not like beyond that, the more that I know, the better leader I will be. However, it is the case that beyond that, the better people skills you have, the better leader that you will be. Goldman concludes that emotional competence made the crucial difference. Close to 90% of those people's leadership success was due to their emotional intelligence. For star performers in all jobs in every field, emotional competence is twice as important as purely cognitive abilities. For success at the highest levels in leadership position, emotional intelligence counts for virtually the entire advantage. Now, I'd like to pause here and have you dip your toes in. There was a handout back there that's just a single sheet handout, and if you don't have one, I'm sure there's more in the back, that says 25 key EQ competencies or EQ skills. This is right out of Goldman's book, Working with Emotional Intelligence. What I'd like you to do is think of your own position here at Advisors Excel. Think of if you were hiring someone to fill your position today. Skim the list and say, which ones of these are most important to do my job here? And as you skim it, I'd like you to check off or circle or however you want to do it, star 5 or 6 of those traits that you say, they're really important to do my job here. Okay, 5 or 6. Give it a star or a check. Any questions? Take a few minutes to do this, please. If you finish, feel free to share with someone next to you if you'd like. If you don't want to, just tell them it's none of their dang business. You're not sharing what yours are. But if you want, take a minute. We just have a minute or so to share if you'd like. And I'm going to ask you to do one step further. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to take it one step farther. Force yourself to choose the one most important one that you consider to do your job. How many of you think I really need all of these to do my job? Force yourself to choose the one that you say, I have to choose one. I would choose this one as most important to do my job here. Decide what that is. Okay, now I'm going to read through the 25, and I want you to raise your hands nice and high so we can see, and please feel free to look around to see which ones are most important in Advisors Excel, at least in this group. How many of you said emotional intelligence? Raise them high if that was your number one. Just looking for your number one. Accurate self-assessment, self-confidence, self-control. Is that a customer service person over there? Trustworthiness. Yes, did our accountant there? No, okay. Conscientiousness, adaptability, innovation, achievement drive, commitment, initiative, optimism, understanding others. Interesting. Developing others. Good. Service orientation. Oh, that was probably the majority so far. Leveraging diversity. Political awareness. Influence. Communication. That's another big one. Conflict management. Leadership. Change catalyst. Building bonds. Collaboration and cooperation. Oh, that was a lot there. And team capabilities. Excellent. Just want you to keep those things in mind as we delve one more step farther into emotional intelligence. Any questions so far at this point? Questions or comments? Okay, we're going to take it one more step before we get into our strategies. I just want to show you, because this came out in 2009 from Bradbury and Greaves, and they came out with just another way to look at emotional intelligence, and they divided it into 4 quadrants, those being self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. It's just another way to look at it, but I think he has some good stuff here. Self-awareness means to know the types of things that make you happy, like faking crying and getting your older brother in trouble. How many of you remember doing this as a child? Such joy. Self-awareness really means to understand yourself, to know what types of tasks at work really charge your battery, to know what types of tasks at work really drain you. You understand your emotions and what's going on. You understand what types of people and situations push your buttons. How many of you would say, I have a certain personality type that drives me crazy? Whether it's a gossiper, a whiner, a complainer, a manipulator. It's helpful to know that, right? So when you see that person coming, you don't overreact. You say, I know I have a sensitivity toward whiners, and here she comes. So I'm going to try to keep calm here. The other thing he says is to recognize your emotions when you're having them. That's self-awareness. Bradbury and Greaves said that only 36% of you in this room, including myself, only 36% of us know what emotion we're experiencing at the moment we're experiencing it. Only 36% of us could say what emotion you're feeling right now. I liken it to this. In Iowa, we go morel mushroom hunting in the spring. Do you do that here in Kansas? All right. Yes, it's a wonderful activity. And my husband went morel mushroom hunting with some friends, and we had a big bowl of these mushrooms in our refrigerator a couple years ago. And we were cooking and serving them and sauteing and different things. And one day, I opened up the refrigerator door, and have you ever smelled rotting morel mushrooms? It was disgusting. I opened it up, and this wall of stench came at me. Now, I could have taken some air freshener to the refrigerator door, opened it up, and went and closed the door. Would that have solved my stinking problem? No. Obviously, I had to open it up, figure out what is smelling in here, grab the morel mushrooms, remove them, get to the root cause, and remove it. I think many times we're that way with our emotions. We're sitting at our desk and we're thinking, gosh, I'm kind of in a grumpy mood today. I just feel a little irritable. And rather than thinking what's really going on, we say, you know what? I could use a little temporary feeling better. You know what? There's brownies in the break room with chocolate frosting. I know what I'll do. I'll meet with the girls for a few glasses of wine after work. That always relaxes me. I think I'm going to do a little retail therapy and go online and spend a little money. Rather than doing the temporary fix, rather than saying, oh, I know why I'm grumpy. I talked to my sister this morning on the phone. I probably was a little harsh. I'm feeling a little guilty. I probably should call her back and apologize and actually root at that cause. That's why self-awareness can be very important. The other one, he says, another one is self-management. Grumpy Cat says two things. Where have you been all my life? And would you please go back there? Self-management means that ability to control your emotions. Raise your hand if you know someone who has no filter over their mouth. If it comes into their head, it's going right out. Self-management is just the opposite. It's having the ability to say, you know what? I can bite my tongue a little bit and not say this because I know the results if I don't. It means to be resilient, to not give up during difficult times. God forbid, if you all went back to your desk this afternoon and they came over the intercom system. Do you have an intercom system? All right, pretend you do. And they said, I just want you to know that Advisors Excel is closing permanently. You've all lost your jobs. Please leave your desk immediately. How many of you know enough about yourself to say, I know I would land on my feet eventually. If I lost my job here, I would land on my feet eventually. There are some people when and I've worked with them through Iowa Workforce offices, when they find out they've lost a job, they kind of curl up in a ball for 6 months to a year. The part of self-management is that ability to pick yourself up when times are difficult and don't go your way and keep moving forward, to keep yourself motivated. Social awareness, disapproval, you'll know it when you see it. That is the ability to pick up what other people are feeling. Can't tell you the number of times my husband Chris and I have been to a party, and we'll be driving home from the party, and I'll say, did you notice Adrienne seemed a little out of sorts tonight? I wonder if something's going on. She seemed kind of like she was upset. And my husband will be like, what? She seemed fine to me. When we talk about male-female differences, female studies will tell us do better in social awareness. We do a better job of kind of sensing people's feelings, sensing people's moods, but lest we get too cocky about this, men do better in self-management. Self-management. Sir, what's your name? Matt. Self-management means that if Matt and I have an exchange, we have we get irritated with each other, and we kind of have words here. Self-management means within 10 minutes, he's probably gone about his day. And 3 days later, I may still be stewing about this thing. Yeah, and you're all going, we do. Yeah. Self-management, men tend to be better at that, kind of letting things go better than females. To get an accurate sense how others are responding to you, to communicate in a way that considers your perspective, meaning you don't ramble on. There's direct communicators. Well, if I want to borrow $20, I say, can I borrow $20? And you say, sure, thank you. This is the one. You go too. Some are very inductive or indirect communicators, and some of you may know people who communicate like this, not considering your perspective. I'm going to ask you for $20, and here's how I do it. Here's the thing. I'm going out for margaritas with the girls tonight. Actually, we were going to go tomorrow night, but Marlissa's daughter Becky is home from college. Becky actually goes to work with my son Alex. Actually, they went to high school together. They never dated, and then they started dating in the college. It was the most amazing thing. Well, anyway, they ended up breaking up. And so we were going to do it tomorrow night. Then I went to my purse this morning. How many of you know someone who communicates like this? What do you want to do with them? Slap the bejeebers out. Yes, give her the $20 so she shuts up, right? Very inductive. Part of social awareness is knowing not to ramble on to people too much and knowing when it's too direct. How many of you work with customers again? To say to a customer, no. Period. That's too direct. Instead to say, well, we can't provide that, but this is what we can provide instead. The last piece of this is relationship management, which really is about to do all the things that we need to do to sustain good long-term relationships. I'm going to put up here a few statistics that you can kind of read through these later, but I want to highlight two of them in gold. One of the biggest misconceptions, I think, about emotional intelligence, besides the fact people think it's warm and fuzzy, which it has really nothing to do with that. But the other one is that sometimes people think if we have someone who works at AE and they are the loudest person, they are the life of the party, that must be the person with the highest emotional intelligence in the room. Why might that not be the case at all? Might be absolutely turning people off and they have no idea. Conversely, you could be someone who's naturally shy and quiet, kind of sensitive, kind of tender, and yet people really enjoy working with you and they find you to be very trustworthy and very likable. And you might have emotional intelligence off the charts. It has nothing to do with introvert, extrovert. The other thing, this is actual from 2009, they found people with high EQs make an average of $29,000 per year more than people with low EQs. How many of you need a raise in here thinking, all right. All right, now we're going to switch and go into ways to increase our emotional intelligence. So, first of all, I want you to turn to someone next to you right now and just tell me, what are your biggest pet peeves when it comes to people who are bad listeners? Just turn to that person and vent for 1 minute. What do bad listeners do that just irritate the bejeebers out of you? Everybody turn to someone right now. What do bad listeners do? Okay, let's hear it. What do bad listeners do? Raise your hand if you'd be willing to share. We'll hit several here. What do bad listeners do that just irritate the bejeebers out of you? Yes.
They just wait for their next turn to talk instead of acknowledging what you just said to them.
Yeah, they're not even listening. They're just thinking, how am I going to respond? When is she going to take a breath so I can come in and talk about what I want to talk about? What else do bad listeners do?
Ask you the same question over and over.
Ask you the same question over and over. You just answered it. What else do they do? Interrupt. What else? No eye contact whatsoever, or they're looking at their phone, distracted by that. What I want you to realize, I think people, when I talk to people about emotional intelligence, and I've coached quite a few employees on how to be, and managers, on how to be better received by people, to be better liked, to have people respond better to you. One of the easiest things we can all do to increase our emotional intelligence, including myself, is to become a better listener. If you say, how can I impress the ladies when I go out at night, man? I'm telling you, become a better listener. You want to impress your future in-laws? Become a better listener. There is a very strong correlation at work and at home between your listening skills, how well you listen to people, and how much people feel that you respect them. If you're someone you really listen to people, you're interested in what they have to say, you give them good nonverbal feedback, you're leaning in positive body language and really seem open and interested, they feel respected by you. They feel cared about. But if you don't, you interrupt, you only talk about yourself, you cut them down, shut them off, people feel disrespected. Did you know that? That's why there's a lot of problems in relationships and with customers if they feel like I'm not even being listened to. Curious if you recognize any of these poor learners in your life. The first one is the faker. They're nodding, they're smiling, they seem to be paying attention, but their mind is absolutely elsewhere. The interrupter, we talked about that one. The intellectual listener might be a very smart person. They might have a very high IQ, but a very low EQ. Intellectual listeners, they understand the words you're saying, but they're not picking up at all on the emotions associated with those words. So you might literally have tears running down your face, and you're saying, I'm fine, really, I'm fine. And they say, she's fine, what's the big deal? That's an intellectual listener. Actually, I had a woman at a conference yell out, that's a husband. Sorry, I did not concur with that. What does the one-upper do?
That has to be the worst.
Oh, yeah, you think your house is dirty? I've got rats running through mine. They just make up stuff so they could have a better story. Rebuttal maker. Do we have any of you work with engineers? Probably not so much. I've worked with a number of engineering companies. Very common engineer. He's already been married to an engineer, dating an engineer. Oh, well, you may relate to this. They say it's very common engineering traits. Engineers listen very carefully, rebuttal makers listen very carefully to what you have to say, because when you're finished, they want to explain why all your logic was wrong, your facts were flawed, you should have listened to what I said in the first place. Get a nod? Can I get an hallelujah on that one? Last one is, who's our advice givers? You have the 30-second solution to anyone's problem, no matter how severe it is and how many years they've had it. You can solve it like this. We've got one up here. You can as well. Yes, my husband years ago, I have a very, very good husband, or we wouldn't be together all these years. But I remember I worked in a very stressful work environment, and I would come home at the end of the day just wanting to vent, just wanting to get it off my chest. And I would start saying, you wouldn't believe the day that I had. And he would interrupt and say, here's what you should do. No, don't do that. Most people just want to vent, and they don't want you to come up with a quick, short-term solution. How do you become a better listener? A couple of things. Probably the best quote I ever heard on effective listening came from Stephen Covey, who passed away several months ago. Stephen Covey said, seek first to what? Understand. Meaning when you go into a situation where you're listening to someone, your first priority should be just to say, I just want to understand what they're saying, what they're feeling. He said lots of times we go into listening situations with agendas. Oh, well, when Matt comes into my office, I want to convince him of X, Y, Z. Or we have judgments. When Matt comes into my office, it's going to be the same old BS that it always is. And he says neither one of those is real listening. Real listening says, first of all, I just want to understand where this person is coming from. Second of all, create a physical environment by your body language and everything that says I'm listening. Everybody give me body language right now that says, Brenda, I am so listening to you. I just think you're like the best speaker that ever landed in the planet. And I'm so listening to what you have to say. Very good. Now, everybody give me, it's always a little creepy when people do that. It's like, right, give me body language that says, I am so bored and so checked out and so sick of your message that I can hardly stay. Everybody give me, sir, you did not move one way or the other. What is this about? You did not move one iota. Meaning by your body language and everything, you lean in and let them know you're listening. Encourage them to talk. Ask questions because you want to know more. Use paraphrasing. What is paraphrasing? When someone talks and you paraphrase, what does that mean? Repeating it back. Especially with you have an upset customer or client, let them vent, let them get it out, and then say, let me see if I have this straight. Repeat it back to them. That way people know that you have it. Statements of empathy, saying, oh my gosh, I can tell that was frustrating for you. People like to know that you're grading their emotion. And the last one, I think this is the most often overlooked, is to realize that many times people come at us with one emotion, particularly in the case of anger, but there's other things going on. When I started my career, I was 22 years old, and I taught high school English in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And occasionally I would have a student come stand in my office door between classes, usually a male, 17, 18 years old. I taught juniors and seniors. And this male would start an intelligent conversation with me like this, between classes. This school sucks. Can't wait to get out of here. The teachers suck. The students suck. Everything sucks. And I'd say, sit down, I have a few minutes, sit down and talk. What's going on? Usually what they were saying was, I'm flunking a certain class. I'm the only kid in the class who doesn't understand it. I feel like an idiot in front of my friends. I don't know how I'm going to pass it here, much less go on to pass college. So they were coming at me with one emotion, anger, the school sucks. What were the real emotions going on just beneath the surface they didn't feel as comfortable sharing? Fear. Insecurity. Shame, embarrassment. But how many 18-year-old boys do you know who are going to say, I'm feeling a little ashamed in front of my peers today? That's not going to happen. So they come at you with anger. That's socially acceptable. And we think, well, we are so much better than that as full-grown adults. I've heard lots of stories, for instance, of nursing home administrators. Imagine you're the top dog at the nursing home. You're the head cheese. And my mom's in your nursing home. And I come into your office this morning just enraged with anger, screaming at you that your CNA washed my mother's hair last night after we just had it done in the salon yesterday morning. And I am just enraged with anger at you. But what are the other emotions I'm feeling just beneath the surface from putting mom in the nursing home? Guilt, loss, sadness, grief, mourning that she's not the person she used to be, fear. But I don't feel as comfortable saying that. So I come with anger. What's the point is when someone comes at you in your personal and professional life with anger, our tendency lots of times is to be baited by that anger and go, oh yeah? Sometimes you're smarter just saying, sit down, let's talk. Let's try to get at what's really going on here. So that's a good thing to do. Second of all, now for this, I love this baby's body language. I need a man in the audience who has some experience with women. Is there anyone that... I'm coming back here because this is like the male plethora here. Who do you think? Sir, you in the blue, you have some experience with women?
Not to speak of.
Now, I'm going to put up a photo here of a man communicating with a woman. And I want you to tell me, based upon your experience with women, how do you think it's going for him?
I'd say not well.
Not well. I always wonder at what age do little boys figure out, having 3 sons myself, do they figure out that she is not happy there? I think it's pretty young. Now, I want to make one more point. I want all of you to turn to someone next to you right now, and I want you to speak these exact words. I like your shirt. But I want you to do it in such a way that lets them know you're repulsed by the shirt they've chosen to wear today. You think it is the ugliest shirt in the history of shirts. Everybody say, I like your shirt right now, those exact words. Go ahead, everybody do it. I like your shirt. Okay. The reason I had you do that, and while I had the gentleman do that activity in regards to how much we can tell by our body languages, studies, this is old research from UCLA, but I think it's valuable research, tells us when you're communicating with someone, a client, a spouse, a customer, a child, like when I'm communicating with you right now, only 7% of the message you're getting from me right now is based upon my words, what I'm saying, only 7%. 93% is other stuff. 38% is my tone of voice. 55% of what you're getting, a tone of voice as in, I like your shirt. 55% is your body language. So I've had people say, you know, I don't understand your name here.
Cat.
I don't know, I understand why Cat was all bent out of shape. All I did was I walked up to her and I said, Cat, I am totally open to what you have to say. I'm open. What? What is my body language screaming at Cat? Closed off. Emotionally intelligent people pay attention to this chart. Look up here. On the left-hand side column are the types of body language that people in the United States tend to respond well to. These are the things that if you want to impress people, you want to make a good first and lasting impression, you do these things well. It's things like having consistent eye contact. You can kind of, if you're not real comfortable, you don't want to stare them in the eye like you've fallen in love with them. But you can just kind of generally look around their face in general, show some interest, look away for a while, show back. That's just perfectly fine. Smiling. Having a confident, upright posture. My sons have been in many, speech contests, music contests during the year. And I always said to them, when you go in front of that judge, it's you one-on-one to sing this solo, and you're just scared to death and your knees are shaking. You can trick yourself into being more confident just by walking in there, firm stance, shoulders back. Good morning, my name's Jacob Hamilton, blah, blah, blah. You can actually trick your body. They've even done studies now from Harvard. Amy Cuddy, have any of you ever seen the research on power poses, her TED Talk? That show that literally you can change your body chemistry. You can increase your testosterone level, your, kind of He-Man, I am woman, hear me roar, bold hormone, just by standing in a power pose like this for 2 minutes. Granted, this might be a little awkward standing in the lunch line like this, but the idea is use your body language. Other things I think on here, open arms. I know lots of times, especially women at events, say the reason I sit like this is because I'm cold. But what if you're sitting in a team meeting like this? How might that be perceived? You look angry. You look closed off to what they're saying. Be aware of that. The other one I think is often overlooked is an expressive face. How many of you had the experience where you're talking to someone and you're telling them something you think is pretty funny and their face never moves? I mean, that's part of being well received, is that, if you say something funny, the person actually cracks a smile. That's part of that. A couple other considerations. Ask yourself on your tone of voice. When you introduce yourself to someone, do you have some energy, some enthusiasm? Or do you sound like, hey, nice to meet you. I might fall asleep here. Another thing is pay attention to basic body languages. For instance, this is called arms akimbo. And I, lots of times after I'm done speaking, will be talking to people one-on-one, and I tend to use this body language. I don't know if I'm airing out my armpits or what's going on. But how can this be perceived as people if I'm standing like this? How do I?
Overpowering.
A little. You're like, get away from me, crazy woman. You're overpowering, right? I mean, it can be very overpowering. The researchers tell us, and I thought this was a little odd, but they said if you do this, take your thumbs, move them forward. And now I seem more curious and less likely to take your head off. Another one that we try to avoid, this is called the regal stance. It's like the Prince Charles. It's kind of like standing there saying, I am above all of you. Please do not approach me. Another one, the thigh block. This is you're standing talking to someone. Oh, I don't have a chair up here. May I borrow your chair, Matt, for just a moment? And I'm talking to you. Your name is? Melissa. Melissa and I are talking, and all of a sudden, I don't like what she says. So I shift in my chair, give her the thigh, and it's like, talk to the thigh. It's a thigh block. It's a very disrespectful move. It's similar to doing this. Someone's talking. Oops, I lost my book. Someone's talking, and the entire time they're speaking, you're brushing across your thighs like this. Do you know what this essentially means, according to researchers? It's basically, I am dismissing everything you're saying. I'm just wiping it off. Has no effect on me whatsoever. It's similar to they're telling you something very important and valuable, and you're picking lint off of them as they speak. It kind of has that same effect. Thank you. You may have your chair back now, Matt. The other thing I would mention, and I need to get to my last point pretty quickly, is mirroring. How many of you have heard of mirroring? It's a very odd phenomenon. The studies actually tell us that if you kind of mimic the person you're talking to, their body language, that there is something about them that they innately, unconsciously think, wow, that person really gets me. They had originally found this with research assistants, that they found when they met with the participant and they mimicked their body language, the participant was like, wow, I really liked your research assistant. She was great. And so then they put 2 MBA candidates in a room, and they gave them kind of an item they had to come to some sort of consensus on where there was disagreement between them. When there was no mirroring of body language, they reached consensus 12.5% of the time. When they said, go back in, mirror her body language without her knowing you do, just go and mirror her body language, they reached consensus 67% of the time. Now, what is mirroring? What does it look like? May I pick on you? Yes. Come on up here. We're going to have a conversation, and your name is? Michaela. Michaela and I are talking, and so she's going to stand however she's going to stand, and I'm going to be the one mirroring. So she's like this, and I'm also like this, okay? You have another pose? Okay. We're talking, and you do that. So suddenly, over time, the next 30 seconds, I do that as well. Now, it can't be like Simon Says, where just, woo, you know, woo, woo. But, I mean, I casually get you another pose, Michaela?
Trying to give you a good pose, not the...
No, you know, not the disrespect. So she can't, the idea is, yes, then I casually do the same. Okay. Mirroring with people. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just to show that people actually mirror. Oh, look, it's a couple on a date mirroring. Oh, look, it's the Pope mirroring. Barack Obama mirroring. Oh, a dog and a baby mirroring. It works for everybody. Last one I want you to think about when it comes to emotional intelligence is this valuable, when we talk about attitude and whatnot, of living with mojo. I'm going to give you each now what I call the Life Can Be Annoying quiz. I want you to raise your hand if any of these things have happened to you in the last month, okay? And raise them high. Raise your hand if in the last month one of your household appliances has broken down. And the idea is to look around and to realize you're not the only one who has an annoying life. All right, raise your hand if in the last month one of your vehicles has needed repaired. If you've had any kind of unexpected household expense. Raise your hand if in the last month you've sworn at your computer. It's unanimous. You drove through a fast food restaurant, got home, and realized they did not give you all the food that you ordered in the drive-thru. Something went through the washing machine that clearly should not have. And our last three, raise your hand if in the last month someone annoyed you at work. Someone annoyed you at home. Someone is annoying you at your table right now. Okay. First of all, people laugh at this graphic way more than they should. If I give you a nice big straw, will you go suck the fun out of someone else's day? The reality is life has its share of annoyances. You may or may not, I don't know if you have any country music fans in the room, my husband and I, his employer, sent us all to see, as a part of a little team building thing, to see Daryl Worley, the country music singer, in live. You like Daryl? he's not hard on the eyes either, was kind of my impression. Anyway, he has this great song called Sounds Like Life to Me. And in the song, the guy's sitting at the bar with his buddy, and he's going on and on, man, you just don't get how bad my life is right now. Baby's teething. I think my wife's pregnant again. Washing machine's broken down. Car's not working. Mother-in-law's got to go into the nursing home. I can't get enough hours at work. Man, you just don't get how bad my life is. And his friend turns to him and says, what? Sounds like life to me. Case of everyday reality. You know, the reality is we all have our share of annoyances in life, and the question is, how are you going to respond to that? Part of emotional intelligence is realizing people want to be around happy people. People are drawn to be around happy people. And I'm not talking about fake people who are like, I'm having the best day ever, where you just want to slap them upside the head. Not that kind of person. But I'm talking about people want to work with and be in long-term relationships with people who have basically a positive, upbeat, pretty stable attitude. Not that they don't have a bad day here or there, but they just can remain happy. Researchers did a study, citation is up there, where they took people at the start of the day, like in this room, and they assessed everybody's level of happiness. So they had some idea of who was happiest and unhappiest in the room. Then they paired them up for random conversations. They said, okay, you two women, you visit for 5 minutes, you two talk, you two talk. Okay, everybody switch, find a new partner, and talk to them for 5 minutes. After each little conversation, they would interview the participants one-on-one. And they'd say, so, did you like so-and-so? Would you like to have another conversation with so-and-so? Did you like her as a person? They did this each time. At the end of the day, the researchers found there was a very strong correlation between the happiest people in the room being the people who liked it most and wanted to have another conversation with. If they did get paired up with one of the least happy people, they'd say, well, that was nice. Would you like to talk to her again? Not so much. Another way of looking at this is ask yourself, most days do I show up for work and life with an attitude of mojo or nojo? This is from Marshall Goldsmith, management expert. The left-hand column is mojo. This is when you show up for work and you're like, I am here, I'm ready to roll. I might be a little tired from the weekend, but I'm going to put in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I'm going to serve our customers with excellence, but it would be easy to get along with. I'm grateful to have this job for an amazing company that provides us amazing opportunities and a beautiful building. Also, I'm grateful to be here. I'm wide awake. I'm ready to go. I'm going to make the best of this day. We all know people who show up for work in life with nojo. Nojo is someone who walks in the door at work and they're like, ugh. I'm here. Just give me the minimum to get by. And they complain all day long. And then when they finish their workday, they go home to their family, and what do? They complain to them about how bad their life is. One of the things that Marshall Goldsmith said in his book that struck me, he said, the problem is when any of us show up for work and life with an attitude of nojo, essentially you're saying to the people around you, you know what, I'd rather be anywhere in the world than with you people here right now. You make my life miserable. And ask yourself, wow, is that the attitude that I want to spend? Now, how do you get to living with mojo more often? Let me put up a quick piece of advice. Recognize when you're grumpy. Raise your hand if you know when you're getting grumpy. Raise your hand if you know when people around you are getting grumpy. Some people, it's like they're starting to get grumpy, and they go, wow, I feel a case of the grumpies coming on. You all are going to pay, right? I encourage you instead, emotionally intelligent people, rather than saying, I'm feeling grumpy, you're all going to pay, I'm going to make your life miserable. Instead say, what is it that I need that I'm not getting right now? What is it that do I need a really good night's sleep tonight? Do I need a break away from my children for a little bit? I've got a little too many diapers to change. I could use a little break in the evening. What do I need? We were on vacation at Lake of the Ozarks of Missouri about 4 years ago. We stayed on a condo, which we did for several years in a row, with right on the lake, beautiful for a week. My husband and at that time 3 teenage sons. A lot of testosterone in the condo. And I remember vividly waking up the 4th day of vacation, turning to my beloved husband and saying, I could take somebody's head off this morning. And he said, what's going on? And I said, for 3 days we have done the guy things. We've done the fishing, we've done the go-karts, we've done the jet skis, we've done the video game stores. I said, there are outlet malls 1 mile that way I have not stepped my foot into. And he dangled the car keys, wise man he is, and said, go have some fun, we'll see you later today. Now, 20 years ago, I'm not kidding, I would have said, that is so selfish. How dare you insist in the middle of family vacation to get time to yourself? And yet now, at my older, wiser age of 50, I really honestly believe I have some responsibility as a wife, a mom, a professional woman, a business owner, that when I'm getting grumpy, rather than saying, y'all gonna pay, say, what is it? What do I need? What do I need? And that includes men as well. My husband regularly, he supervises 30 men. And about once a month on Thursday afternoon, I'll get a call about 3 o'clock. And he'll say, hey, we're having a manager's meeting at Tim's house at 5. I know what that means. I'm going to slam a few beers down, that sort of thing. Okay, ask yourself then, what does it need? And I always recommend a massage. That's a really... We have squirrels in Iowa. They are the most amazing. I just filmed that in my backyard earlier this week. It was absolutely amazing. One other thing, raise your hand high if you're a hugger. You like to hug people. Raise them really high so we know who to avoid on the way out. Okay. One study found that people who hug in life are significantly happier. All right. I'm going to wrap up real quickly by giving away 2 mugs. And then I'm going to share a very final brief survey. First of all, if you please look on the back of your thicker packet. On the very back, 2 of you, I hid a star sticker, like a smiley face kind of sticker. I can't remember exactly what it is. Here you go. You're going to take home a mug full of chocolate. It had been in my car overnight, so it might be a little misshapen. Yeah. Seriously. Do we have another one? I put hid to. Here you go. I do want to tell you, ladies, these are my logo mugs, so if you garage sale these, I will track you down, okay? Just so you know. All right. I'm going to close here with a very quick 2-minute story, and I'll stay after if anyone has any questions. First of all, any questions or comments that are pressing you want to ask in front of the whole group. I always balance wanting to get questions, but also wanting to respect your time. Okay, I'm going to close with a very quick, brief story to kind of wrap it up. First of all, I hope you've picked up one point at least. Something where you say, I can apply this right away. Pay attention to my body language, be a better listener, whatever that, watch my attitude and all that, because attitude is contagious. Final story, I think has a good point for all of us, the glazed donut study. They took people at the start of the day, and they assessed their level of happiness, so they knew who was happiest, least happy in the room. Then they brought them into a room, and I want you to imagine a buffet table that extends the full length here of every kind of dessert you could possibly want to eat. From your chocolate cake with chocolate frosting, to your fudge, to your banana split, to your tiramisu, your raspberry white chocolate cheesecake, everything you could possibly want to have. And they said to each person, take your tally, and I want you to tell us how much, by numbers, you want to eat each individual dessert. How much you want that tiramisu. How much you want that cheesecake. So they knew which item you most wanted to eat. Then they said, okay, this is the dessert you're actually getting. And they purposely gave each one in the room one of their least favorite desserts. Something like the lowly glazed donut that barely qualifies as a donut, in my humble opinion. Now, I want you to imagine, you're the least happy person in the room. Life is always giving you the shaft and nothing goes your way. And now you're handed the crappy glazed donut. How did these people respond to that? Absolutely complaining. Oh, sure, I suppose he got the tiramisu and I'm here with the crappy glazed donut. Isn't this just typical of how my life goes? Now, I want you to imagine the most happy people in the room. Tend to look for the good things in life, but they get handed one of their least favorite desserts. What did they say? Thank you. Wonder of wonders. Thank you. The researchers said they actually rated the dessert more highly after it was chosen for them. They said things like, honey, this is one dang good glazed donut. I didn't even know I like these things. We gotta buy these things. These things are good. And they liken it to people in our lives. I don't know about everybody in this room, but I don't always get my first choice in life. I may not be living in the perfect home, driving the perfect automobile, with the perfect husband, and the perfect 3 young adult sons doing perfectly what I want them to do all day long. You're smiling a little bit too much as one of those young adults. We can talk later. Okay. But I may not be living a perfect life, but there is something about emotionally intelligent, resilient people that says, you know what? This house isn't perfect, but I could sure make it a home. This may not be the perfect position for me right now, but I could sure learn and change people's lives and do the best I am until something else comes up that's better or that I'm better prepared for. These children may not be geniuses, but I could sure grow them into loving, caring adults. You learn to enjoy the glazed donut. And that's part of what it means to be emotionally intelligent, is to, on an ongoing basis, say, you know what? My life ain't perfect, but no one else's is either. And I have a lot to be thankful for. So thank you so much for having me here. I'll be here if you have any questions. Have a great day. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.